I want to talk about unconditional love, a topic that to me is very interesting. And I really want some feedback on this one in the comments. The thing about these speakdoms is I do enjoy reading the comments, even if you guys disagree, because I really like the philosophy and I really like talking to people from different backgrounds and different histories and cultures and whatnot. But I want to talk about unconditional love and whether or not unconditional love actually exists, because I have thought a lot and I've seen a lot and I've been through a lot, and there are others who have been through much more. But it is from my understanding that what Chris Rock once said was true. Now, I'm paraphrasing Chris Rock, but what he said was something to the effect of women, dogs, and kids have unconditional love, but men are conditionally loved. Now, obviously, he's a comedian. He is, telling a joke, but a lot of times jokes work because there is a smudge of realism in the joke. I'm not sure if I believe that there can be true unconditional love between a man and a woman, or between two gay partners or two lesbian partners or whatever, between two, like a romantic relationship. I'm not sure if unconditional love actually exists there. I do believe that there is a bond, and we're talking about this from the scientific perspective for just a moment. There's definitely a bond between mother and child and father and child. So you can unconditionally love your parents just like they can unconditionally love you. If you screw up, your parents will most likely be there for you even if they know you screwed up. But what about your friends? What about your partner? That's where things get a bit muddled. It seems to me that from my experience, you only really experience unconditional love in that kind of relationship. Your parent, your guardian, maybe your sibling, something familial. When it comes to a relationship, however, some of you guys might have your head in the clouds, which happens to all of us when we fall in love. It's very normal. And some of you guys might actually think that unconditional love is actually unconditional love. One of the quotes that Corey Wayne often says, and I do respect Corey Wayne's opinion on this, is he says, and it resonates with me. When a woman says I love you, she really means I love you right now. Now, obviously it's a generalization, and obviously there are outliers. But there's truth to this. If you study evolutionary psychology, and if you've been out there, you'll come to understand that it is very rare. I'm not going to say it's non-existent, but it is very rare for two people who are in a romantic relationship to love each other unconditionally. It may seem like it's unconditionally, but it is conditional oftentimes, more often than not. If you study what makes a man and a woman attracted to each other, you'll understand that if you're in a long-term relationship, and when I say long-term, I'm talking about years, and let's say the man loses his focus, loses his ability to acquire resources, loses, gains weight, loses what made him attractive in the first place, stops dating his wife and just gets lazy and treats her like a roommate, that will lead to an eventual divorce, breakup, or infidelity. It might not happen right away, and not everyone will do it, but I've seen it happen so often. I've talked to so many women who have told me and confessed to me that sometimes they'll leave their partner just because the guy stopped being the guy they fell in love with. You hear that a lot, right? And it goes the other way too, even though guys will never admit this. But if you're in a long-term relationship, eventually your girl partner, we're talking about straight relationships now, if she lets herself go, doesn't take care of herself, becomes more whiny, things change, people change, that could also hurt the attraction. And then at that point, we got to discuss, okay, how are we going to fix this? Are you both going to work together on the relationship? Are you both going to go to marriage counseling? Or what are you going to do? You got to do something, right? Or it's going to lead to one of two possibilities. There's only two destinies here. You break up, or you stay together for the rest of your life, but you're actually miserable. How many old people I've seen in my life who have stuck together, and they're literally in their 70s and 80s, and they love each other. There's a lot of people like that. And I feel like that unconditional love takes time to build if it's even going to. You understand? I know that earlier in this video I said it's very rare. And it is becoming more and more rare nowadays with the divorce rate being so high and people being so, people are different now than they used to be, right? But I often will look at a couple, and just for context, guys, I used to work at a retirement home as a security guard many, many, many years, like 15 years ago. So I saw a lot of this. I often wonder if the two people are actually happy or if they're with each other because they're complacent. And that's a scary thing because you really don't know. They may seem like they love each other, but there might be something inside that they hate or they dislike or there's something going on. Oftentimes, I tend to see patterns, and that'll tell me whether or not it's true love. But I've often thought about, like, is there such thing as true love? Because I think unconditional love is true love. And I think a lot of us have been brainwashed by Disney and Adam Sandler movies into thinking that someday we're going to get this beautiful princess who's going to unconditionally love us no matter what we do. And just to clarify, unconditional love means that somebody's going to love you no matter what. And they're going to love your flaws. Yes, there are some people like this, but it's becoming more and more rare. The internet has changed the game. Online dating has changed the game. Also, the marriage laws. A lot more men nowadays are afraid to get married. And a lot of women want to get married thinking, oh, well, it's going to last forever. What if it doesn't? What if he changes? See what I'm saying? So it becomes a situation where the way society's going, it's conditional. It really is. And if you study things like hypergamy and you study psychology, it's always going to be conditional. But what happens is at some point when you get to a certain age, you tend to just kind of settle. I've seen that happen with many people. So the question is, if you were put in the position where you're with somebody, right, and you don't love them, you do some real deep thought. And okay, let me rephrase that. You really sit down and think introspectively and you say, okay, is this the best person for me? Am I attracted to them? You might love them, but you might not be in love with them. And one of the things that I've learned is that the longer a relationship goes, ideally, you and your partner should become more friends. And I don't mean friend zone. I mean friends like you actually become, it's not just about sex. You know what I mean? You actually become like a unit. You work together. You might even have passions. I might do a whole other video about this. In fact, I probably will. But this whole unconditional, I'll never forget, y'all. Back in 2008, me and my friend Lou went to the sports bar in South Tampa to watch the Great American, I think it was the Great American Bash 2008, which is the wrestling pay-per-view. I think that was the show. And then after the show ended, we were out in the parking lot. First of all, two of the guys were fucking high and drunk. I wasn't. But we were out in the parking lot and we had this long, in-depth talk about unconditional love. We talked about unconditional love. And it was this very same conversation. So, do you think that unconditional love between two partners is possible or not? Some of you guys are probably thinking, and some of you guys, I know you guys are all from different parts of the world. Some of you guys might think, okay, you might not have any experience, but you might just think because you were raised a certain way, you might think, well, of course there is. My mom told me there is. My mom unconditionally loved my dad. That's true. But it seems like the further and further our culture goes, with every new generation, that seems to be changing. You know what I mean? And if I'm wrong, if you disagree, please feel free to comment. This is an observation that I'm making based on looking at the world now. The world has changed quite a bit from when our parents and grandparents were kind of in charge of it. You know what I mean? It's become a lot more shallow, I feel. And the divorce rate went up. People aren't really dating for a long time. Like I'm going to be honest with y'all. A vast majority of friends that I have that are my age have been through divorces. Almost all of them. And what does that tell you? Like, what does that do to me? Think about me for a minute. I got all these friends that have been through divorces. I've certainly had my heart broken by people who say, I will always love you. I'll love you forever. I've heard everything, I'll never leave you. And then shit happens, It happens, man. It's life. But I do think about these things, and I think, man, like, what's the story here? You know, can there really be unconditional love? And if so, like, how am I going to? If all my friends are getting divorced around me, why would I even get married? You understand? Like, that's a trip, man. It's a trip. Think about that. Think about that for a minute. And I'm not trying to tell you guys not to get married. One thing I am going to tell you, though, is you definitely, and this is a mistake I see a lot of guys make, and girls, but mostly guys. Because you have to remember that we live in a gynecological society. I have a hard time saying that word. And because of that, depending on where you live, if you have children and you go through a divorce, you might have to go through hell. You understand that? Most divorce courts side with the women. That's how it is in a lot of states, especially ones like California. You're screwed. So does that mean that it's probably safer not to get married, especially if you have money? I would say so. But what if you want to get married? See, that these are things that I think about sometimes, like, and it's not just me. I think about you guys. Because one of the things with these speakdoms is I'm trying to, like, give back, but I'm also trying to develop some of you guys and, like, maybe, like, help you guys out through my experiences and what things I've read and things I've seen, things I've experienced. And that's what this is. When you have a bunch of relationships that look great and then they don't work, what makes you think that's going to work for me? So you really have to be careful who you marry. You really need to be careful. I might do a whole video on that one as well. And if you're out there and you're one of those guys that doesn't believe in marriage, then at the very least I can tell you that you might be playing it safe there. And there's nothing wrong from that. Or nothing wrong with that, excuse me. But, it's the world is different than what it used to be. Anyways, those are my thoughts. Let me know your opinions on unconditional love. Do you think it can happen between a man and a woman, or two gay guys, or whatever, like two couples? Or is this something that's strictly for children and parents? Let me know.